I feel like our society though is asking people to chase the first thing you said though, where you have everything you need, then figure everything else out. And I don't think that's the way. Like that's why people are getting married older. Yeah. But then it's like you get 35 years old. You don't need them. Like why would you add someone into your life at 35 years old who's just basically a headache if you've gone this far? And you know exactly the routines you want. You know exactly how to spend your time. Yeah. And it's like our society is pushing people to do the individual, like be wealthy, be successful route first, and then figure everything else out. Mm-hmm. And I think going about trying to be wealthy or successful first, it actually like teaches you to be like selfish. It teaches you to like just worry about me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's harder to like break the chains and like then create said relationships or like friendships or like have this abundant richness of life versus like just having the abundant richness and like growing
together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do think there is a stat. I'm not too sure how true it is, but there's a stat that most of the people who gain wealth gain it after marriage. Like when you look at or after a serious long-term relationship. And I think part of that is because once you have that solid, because everyone kind of like you yearn for a good connection with somebody else, a partner, right? And once you've reached the point where you have that, you can now focus on other things. When you know, like you've mended, you're on a good path with your relationship. I think that's the biggest distraction and one of the biggest downfall of like any successful man. There's always like a woman behind it, you know. And so if you figure that out and you get to the point where now you're in like a good space with a woman,
I got pushback.
Go ahead.
I got pushback.
Go ahead.
Don't you think that the downfall happened because he chose a woman who wasn't the right woman? And he did that because he's so focused on XYZ that he's not being specific about what characteristics, like what kind of person should I have in my life? Like,
yeah, okay. So yes, to a degree, part of it is definitely just choosing the right, but I think fundamentally it's just the fact that it's the drive. You know, if that makes sense. Like most of the downfall just comes from the fact that they just were so driven to woman. Then of course, you choose the wrong woman, and then all of a sudden, like you see yourself, oh, she's getting divorced, and then all of a sudden now that takes all your attention, or she takes the kid away, and now you can't see the kid. So part of it is that, but then I will also give you pushback, right? I think the wrong woman is the right woman for somebody else.
The wrong woman is the right woman for someone else, according to whose standard?
Exactly, right. So
there has to be a standard,
but there isn't though, because it's subjective.
There is.
No, there isn't a standard.
This kind of goes back to the whole like faith thing.
Okay,
right? If you have no faith, the standard is whatever makes you happy right now, whatever works in my life right now.
Right.
And comparison.
Yeah.
So if you pick a bad partner and she's always comparing you to someone else, then eventually it's going to end.
Right.
Or if you're doing the same thing, then eventually it's going to end.
Yeah.
So comparison is kind of the ruler, just like before. Like if you have no faith, you're going to compare.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't know.
Think about the standards that someone's like, I'm going to have this be my partner, right?
Yeah.
Someone who has zero faith, I amass this much wealth, I'm this successful. It's probably like, how attractive is she? Like, how much is she good enough where she's sitting beside me? People are like, she's hot or something. Like,
and then she's going to get older.
Right.
You know,
or you're making a decision purely on like, oh my gosh, we can have great sex or something like that.
Exactly,
like it's everything you're like choosing her for is nothing about who she is without faith. And then maybe you do actually like her characteristics, you like her personalities, but now because you're not rooted in something bigger than yourself, maybe she goes through a tough season of life and you're not willing to like sit through the tough season.
Yeah.
And it's because you're not rooted in a belief that's bigger. It's just like, I like you, I like how this is going, and like there's no reason to be committed to anything without faith.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need a certain level of faith, I think, to be able to like be committed to something or belief, because you need to know that there's more than just that situation, right? Like if you just believe that you can do whatever you want, of course you don't need, like, so I agree to a degree, but when I say like, when you're bringing up, let's say she compares you to other people, or she's just never satisfied, let's say that.
Yeah.
Some guys would appreciate a woman like that. Some guys want a woman who's always like, drive me to always be better, always be better, always be better. And then other guys are like, aren't you happy? We're in the top 5% of people on earth living like a life that such a little amount of people get to experience. You should be content with this. And so I think like the type of woman who might be wrong for me in a relationship might be right for the next person. Sometimes that might take her working on herself, right? And maybe she has to make some changes. But fundamentally, like, if you don't agree with that, then I'd ask you, any of your guys, is like any girl you've dated in the past, are they in another relationship now? And if they are, then that kind of goes to show you maybe it didn't work out with y'all, but maybe it can work out with, the next guy.
I personally kind of think that I think people should change and like grow and develop. I 100% agree with that. But don't you think a lot of people will be broken people, like people who aren't willing to fix themselves and just find someone like who's willing to accept their brokenness?
Yes, and I think that's kind of why 50% of marriages end in divorce in America. Because in a way, that comes out of comfortability. It comes out of not wanting to change. And so when you don't want to change, you just find what's comfortable, whether it's how they look, how much money they have, how good, it is when y'all have sex, or if she listens, whatever else it is. And then I think because you stay with that person for comfortability in 10, 15, 20 years, when you're at a different point where maybe sex is, weak, or they don't look as good as they used to. They stop, they're not as like submissive because they're 20 years in, so they know you now, and they're just like, oh, shut up, Joe. I don't, like, go do it yourself, stuff like that. All of a sudden, now you're kind of like, oh, okay, divorce. And so that's kind of why 50% of marriages end, because you're marrying for the wrong things. Like in India and in a lot of these other like traditional countries, they marry in an arranged marriage. It's basically like, are you successful? Are you a successful man? Can you take care of my daughter? Okay, is my daughter pretty? Okay, y'all get married and have 5 kids.
I took this class on marriages, and one of them was successful. Arranged marriages.
Okay.
And there's this lady getting interviewed, and she was like, at first, I didn't like it because I wasn't choosing who I was supposed to be with. But then, since I knew I had to make the relationship work, 100%. We got to know each other, and they became friends.
Yes.
And she was like, 5 years later, they actually loved each other. And I'm not saying every arranged marriage happens and like works like that, but it made me think that like that's the approach we should take for relationships. Like, I'm committed to getting to know you,
figuring it out.
I'm committed to getting to love you because like this is it.
Yeah.
Something really interesting, if I can chime in, like cross section of what you're talking about in the Bible, and when Jesus talks about his relationship with us, he literally calls it a marriage. Yeah. He doesn't call it a father and a son.
Exactly.
He calls it a marriage. So I think that speaks to the unconditional love that you're supposed to provide, which brings the question, can you bring unconventional love if you do not have some sort of faith backing that?
Exactly.
I don't think you can. I think to have unconditional love, there must be a source of unconditional love, teaching / showing the way of that.
But what if you just have faith in the person? What if you think the person is just good enough?
Faith
and you
in
have
the person.
faith that they will always...
So now the person's become God, essentially.
I guess so.
What happens when that person dies? What happens if that person makes a mistake? Your idol has just become obsolete.
I mean, to a degree, it depends on how you see it, right? The term unconditional is still a construct. It's still something.
Is it a construct?
100%. It's something that you still have to be able to bring out from somewhere, right? And so, like, I know there's a philosopher named Alan Watts. He talks about how, in a way, you can't get something from nothing, right? Like, if you believe that there's no God, then how can you believe in creation? How can you believe you can exist right now if something didn't cause that to happen, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I don't think fundamentally you could get... Go ahead.
You got to start there then, right?
Okay.
If God exists, which, and from my view, it'd be impossible for nothing to create nothing. Yes. So let's just start at something. Let's not even go to Bible God. Mm-hmm. Just a figure, some being created everything. Mm-hmm. Why? It could only be from a loving place.
Define loving, though, because you can fundamentally just argue experience or existence as we know it is only because something has to exist in order for, in terms of contrasting nothing to something. A spiritual person could just argue straight up, we just exist because we have to exist, because in order to exist, you have to know what it feels like to not exist. In order to not exist, you have to know what it feels like to exist, and there's a balance.
I say let's go back to something human beings can understand. Okay. I think this is kind of why God placed it in our lives. When you are married and you're happy and you love the other person, the next logical thing is, because I love you so much, I want to bring life into the world together with you. So when God created everything, he didn't need someone else to do that. He created creation so that he could bring life into existence. So like the bringing of life into the world, even for us, in like the healthiest sense, requires love and commitment. So that would, like, just based on the blueprint of how marriage works for us, if that is true and that came from a source, like marriage only exists because it's instituted by a higher creator. Like people who get married now just because, without having a faith in anything, there's like nothing causing them to. Like marriage is specifically something that came from the Bible that now everybody's like, yeah, let's do it. You know,
I think there would always be relationship as we know it. It might not be marriage, but there will always be some, you know, need for a man and a woman to come together. But I don't know. I see what you're saying, though. I see what you're saying. I do think there was a time you once told me that you believe sometimes people can literally exist and their whole purpose for life would just be to have a conversation with one person, and then that might snowball. And
I agree. Right.
I don't know if I fully agree with that.
But we have to just, before we get to like many purposes, we have to start with like, why did being who has all power bring life into the world? The only answer that makes sense is wanting to experience love with said life. In the same way that if I have a child,
yes,
I want to love my child.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a hard take.
low key, right? 'Cause you also could just have a child just because the mom, like, you was just
it's an
like,
accident.
you know, like, literally,
Right.
You don't necessarily need to have the child to like want to bring the child love.
I'm saying in the highest sense of it.
Yes.
I mean, that's why abortion is so crazy high. It's like because people are having relationships with people that they don't love, and like they're not committed to. So like love, if you have no love, no commitment, you don't care about the production.
100%.
If there's love and commitment, you care about what's produced.